As far as my indigenous background and my knowledge of any kind of indigenous background in my life, I was not aware in my adolescence or even in my young age. I had no awareness of where our descendants came from, where any sense of pride would have come from. Most heritages would say, well, this was my grandfather, this is what they've done, and this is my background. I had nothing like that to harness.
Growing up, I didn't know anything at all about my indigenous background. I just basically knew that I was Mexican. Even my parents didn't really speak Spanish in the home, so they weren't second generation, first generation Mexican Americans, but I did know I had ancestors up the ladder in Mexico, and that's about all I knew. I don't even know what part of Mexico, to be honest. Like, my mom's from Kansas and my dad's from Arizona, and then their parents, and then I don't even know what to this day I don't even know what part of Mexico.
What I knew about my indigenous background was the fact that my dad, my mother, both came from, my dad was from Zacatecas, Mexico, and that's where a lot of the Native Americans lived and made an empire.
I never really knew much about my Native American background, I only learned a little bit of my ancestry through my grandparents and my auntie.
I believe in 3rd, 4th grade, Calaveras School, we had gotten a book on the San Juan Bautista mission, and it just gave a very vague description of the mission and the natives who helped build it. Talked nothing about the enslaving. A lot of the key elements that you would think would be told to give you some fair background was not given.
So my education in Hollister, I didn't learn anything about my ancestry or about, where I came from indigenously. It was basically black and white, that's it.
My education background is dated from the 70s, so I'm not part of this new school type of learning. I'm from the old school, and you learn by field trips, by going and visiting different areas, Native American areas out here.
I remember going through school and seeing a lot of, they had taught us a little bit about Native Americans and stuff. I remember learning about it early on in elementary school, with even doing, even being a part of a play that was talking about how Christopher Columbus was sailing to, Native America, how he was supposedly the first one, and the Vikings are supposedly the first one. I remember very vaguely seeing, them showing us a map of North America and showing us a lot of the different tribes. I remember seeing the Blackfoot tribe, and I remember linking that to what my grandparents had told me.
I believe in high school, I was already not in tune, and I missed out on classes like Chicano studies. I'm not sure how robust those studies were, how far in depth they were. I know a lot of people that did take those classes, and they really enjoyed them. They remember a lot of history from it, and I think if that would have gotten to me sooner, I think I would have had that pride instilled. I think I would have had that heritage found a little more. I think I would have been a little wrapped around the subject more, where I could have brought that home and I could have brought those conversations up. But I think the vagueness in the history lessons was enough to lead me astray, where I cared less. I attached myself less. So I could own a lot of this, but at the same time, I look back at this and say, where did you leave the youth? Where did you leave me behind, and where did I go astray?
If I would have known about my background and it was present in my life all growing up, I think it would have changed the way I mothered my kids, our culture, things that we know, things that we would celebrate, the way we celebrate holidays. I think it would have changed my mothering in such a big way. My household would have been different, I believe, had I been educated.
Any type of knowledge I have on my background was passed on by my elders. That's where I learned most of it, from my grandparents. I learned enough. I learned to respect the land, take what you need, leave the rest for others. I learned that it's important to respect people, but I also learned that in order to live the way you want to, you have to be educated.
If I had studied or learned a little bit more about Blackfoot heritage, I probably would have became a lot more knowledgeable in terms of a lot of the bad things that have happened and could happen to people, and probably still happen to this day, and maybe more spiritual or understanding of certain things, some form of enlightenment, not needing any kind of negative forms of thought or anything to help me go by in life.
If you were from the West Side, you were either Native American or Native Mexican, with some Irish who were honorary members of both groups. Of course, there was friction and misunderstanding between the two main groups in the barrio, but the bottom line is the MisReducation concept equally affected us. You heard the interviewees speak about common issues that were linked to not having a better knowledge of their background. It took years for us to finally do the research or to listen to our relatives when it came to understanding who we rightfully are. The topic isn't just limited to the red race in Turtle Island though, as even the so-called white people we grew up with from across town are in doubt about who their pagan ancestors were before their oppressors became our oppressors. That shows you the MisReducation idea impacts everybody who hasn't embraced their earth-based indigenous identity. The MisReducation will continue in some way until we take back what our ancestors were forced to lose because it meant the difference between survival and death.